Sonic, the heart of your system.
Hello, Brandy here from Kit Guru, and in this review I'm taking a look at the Gigabyte AORUS K9 optical mechanical keyboard. It's got a recommended retail price of around £110 here in the UK. So when it comes to this keyboard, in the box you get the keyboard itself, you also get a keycap puller, you also get a set of 9 orange Pbt key caps, and you also get a set of 9 flare tech switches as well. Those flare tech switches that this keyboard use aren't your typical mechanical switches because they are optical and they can also be hot swapped as well. So I've got the red version of the keyboard, so the spare switches it comes with, it's got 9 spare blue switches, and if you opt to buy the blue version of the keyboard, it comes with 9 spare red switches. So you can customize the keyboard layout as to what switches you want where. Those switches as well are sort of the same as the Cherry MX equivalent, so the red switches are linear and the blue switches are tactile and clicky. When it comes to the overall aesthetics, you can see that it looks like a pretty standard full-size mechanical keyboard. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually come with a wrist rest, but I did find it pretty comfortable to type on and use. The entire chassis is mostly made out of plastic, a black plastic, but it does also have a solid metal faceplate as well. In general, I did find the build quality to actually be pretty good. It feels like a very solid and sturdy chassis, and there's no real flex to the body, and while I was typing on it, it does feel like a really solid base. In fact, to me, the build quality actually feels better than some more expensive mechanical keyboards I've tried. The black ABS keycaps that come as standard with this keyboard are pretty basic, but they do match the overall RGB aesthetic, and the font on them is also nice and clear and easy to read also. With this keyboard, you do also actually get a set of Pbt keycaps. So those 9 orange keycaps are made of Pbt, which is a more hard-wearing material, and to me, I also think they feel nicer to type on as well. Unfortunately, being bright orange, they won't match the majority of setups unless you're going for that sort of AORUS theme. The keys on this keyboard are raised slightly off the body, so rather than being set into the face, they're raised up. I do quite like this as it does make them quite easier to clean, and also the RGB lighting can shine out a little bit more brightly as well. It does need all the help it can get because the RGB lighting on this keyboard isn't actually particularly bright, but you do get plenty of effects to choose between when using the Rgb Fusion software. The RGB lighting can also be changed on board the keyboard itself, so by using the function key, you've got options to change the brightness, options to change the effect, and also change the colour and the direction as well. The AORUS Eagle logo in the top right hand corner even lights up RGB, and also the AORUS name at the bottom does light up with a white LED as well. In general, I don't think the lighting and the branding is too over the top though, and I do think it is quite a plain but also decent looking keyboard. When it comes to the functionality on this keyboard, being a slightly more affordable mechanical keyboard, you don't really get any extra things thrown in. So there's no dedicated media keys, there's also no USB pass-through either. However, you do get some media functionality, as by pressing the function key, you have a whole host of media options across the top of the keyboard, although unfortunately you will require 2 hands in order to use them, so you can't sort of change music and things on the fly while you're trying to play while you're gaming. Flipping the keyboard around onto the back, you can see that it does actually have 2 little flip out feet. So the 2 flip out feet on this keyboard do feel pretty nice to use. The keyboard feels nice and sturdy while they are in place. I do personally like using my keyboard at a slight angle. However, the position they are set in does mean that when you move the keyboard around, they could suddenly flick down while you're gaming, which is slightly annoying. I prefer the feet to flip out sideways. Also, around the back of the keyboard, you can see that it does have different cable routing options. So you can route the cable straight up through the middle, or you can route it out either side depending on your desk configuration. The cable itself is nicely braided, and for me this does provide a aesthetic thing because it does look slightly better on the desk than sort of a plain plastic cable. It's also going to be a little bit more hard wearing as well, and it is a decent length at 2 meters. You've got plenty of space to route it to the back of your PC. So when it came to actually using this keyboard, I did do a little bit of an extra test as well, because the viewer actually recommended that I try all my peripherals going forward on Linux, and I can confirm that it seems to work like normal. The RGB lighting can also be controlled on board the keyboard itself, so of course you don't even miss the software too much. So like I mentioned at the start of the video, this keyboard uses the flare tech switches, which can be hot swapped and optimized because of that optical technology. The flare tech switches can be taken out using the included key puller, so one end takes off the keycap, the other end actually removes the switch. The blue switches, because they are tactile, are going to be the better ones for typing on. My keyboard, however, does come with mostly red switches, which are linear switches, and therefore they're going to be better for gaming with. For me personally, it makes the most sense to buy this keyboard in the blue tactile version, so that most of the keys are going to be tactile and they're better for typing on, and then maybe change out the W, A, S and D keys for the linear switches, so those keys can be used for gaming with and they feel better to game on. Despite having the sort of linear red version of this keyboard, I still actually found it quite noisy to type on. So those red switches don't actually have the audible click like the blue switches do, but they do make a bit of noise from the sort of springs on the keyboard, and I also found the stems to be a little bit on the wobbly side as well. Personally, I'm not really a huge fan of the FlareTech optical switches over the Cherry MX switches that I'm used to. However, they do have the same sort of specifications, so they have the same travel distance and the same actuation force as their Cherry MX equivalent. The FlareTech switches do, however, actually have quite a few benefits. So they have a 100 million keystroke lifespan as opposed to the Cherry MX 50 million keystroke lifespan. So that means they're going to survive more key presses and therefore should last longer. They are also splash proof as well. The lack of the metal contacts mean that you can actually pour a significant amount of water over the keyboard and it will still work like normal with no weird key presses or anything. This is obviously a really good feature if you happen to be quite accident prone. Because of the optical technology that the FlareTech switches use, they also only have a 0.3 millisecond debounce delay. This is compared to the 20 milliseconds that you might find on a more traditional mechanical switch. What that basically means is that every key press is going to register 600 times faster than if you're using, for example, a Cherry MX switch. I will be honest though, I didn't actually notice a difference. I am more of a casual gamer, but for me this keyboard didn't actually feel any more responsive, and it certainly didn't make me a better player either. Also, a good thing to mention is this keyboard does actually have a full N key rollover, so every key press should register as it should do. So now it's time to take a little look at the software that comes with this keyboard. So it uses the Gigabyte AORUS engine software, and if you recently watched my review that I did of the Gigabyte AORUS M5 mouse, you know exactly what I'm going to say about this software. So I personally don't think much of it. I have a 4K display and it is really quite small and fuzzy. Some of the text is also quite hard to read as well. Also with this software, I do find it a little bit clunky and unintuitive to use as well. It's a little bit awkward and it really isn't as good as other competitor software. So taking a look at this first page, you can see this is the key assign tab. So here is where you can click on a key and you can reassign it to a few different options. You've got options for the mouse, options for different functions on the keyboard, options for the media player, options for hotkeys, and options for macros as well. So clicking on the macro tab, this is where you can record various macros. It's not too bad to use, like it does definitely work. However, for me, it's not as sort of, there isn't as many options and things as you get with other softwares to create different macros for programs and things. It is just sort of like your straightforward macro recording software. When we click on the LED tab, which is where you control the RGB lighting, it takes a little bit of time, but eventually the AORUS sort of Gigabyte Rgb Fusion 2 software will open up. This piece of software is a lot better than the AORUS engine software, and as you can see, it does detect other RGB components as well. So it's picking up my Corsair memory. If you had like a matching AORUS mouse, it would also detect that as well. So clicking on the keyboard, I've got the rainbow wave effect open and using on the keyboard at the moment, but you can select from several different effects. There's loads that you can sort of choose between really, and you can adjust the colour of the keyboard, and you can also change the different zones as well. So you can sort of have half of your keyboard red, half your keyboard blue, etc. if you wanted to. And it's, once again, a little bit sort of clunky to use, and it hasn't got as many options as other RGB software, like you can't layer up different effects and things. However, it is a lot better than the Aorus engine software. As you can see, it's a bit larger on my display and things, and I do personally prefer this piece of software. So RGB control on this keyboard is actually pretty good, and you can even do it on the keyboard itself. However, when it comes to macros and reassigning keys and things, it's a little bit awkward to use, and I really wish that Gigabyte would sort of update and improve their Aorus engine software. So in conclusion, I do actually think this is a pretty decent keyboard. The build quality is actually really good, and for me, I think it is a good option if you're someone that really wants to try out the faster optical mechanical switches, but you want to do it without breaking the bank. You just want to see if they're faster and see if you actually get on with them, because the technology behind them is really quite interesting, and of course they do have quite a few benefits as well. Unfortunately, with this particular keyboard, the software isn't very good, and also I do think the RGB lighting could be that little bit brighter as well. If you like this video from Kit Guru, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also remember to hit that subscribe button as well, and also remember to press the little bell icon as you get a notification every time a new video goes live. Other ways to support Kit Guru: we also have a Patreon account, we also have a Discord you can join, and we also have some merchandise as well. I am currently wearing one of our rather cool t-shirts, so make sure to check out the link in the description and I'll take you over to our store and you can grab one of your own.